The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry hornets over the packed community center of Willow Creek Estates. Cynthia Beaumont, president of the HOA for 8 glorious years, stood at the head table in her pastel blazer and pearl choker, smiling the kind of smile that made you check your wallet and your soul. "Mrs. Caldwell," she cooed, voice dripping artificial honey, "your little garden project is a violation of every standard we hold dear. And now you're pregnant? How convenient for dodging the fines. Sit down and control your husband or I swear I'll make an example out of both of you." The bottle in her manicured hand tilted. The label read Industrial Brick Cleaner Professional Strength. But the acrid fumes already crawling across the room told a different story. Lena Caldwell's hands flew to her swollen belly. 8 months of baby kicking in protest. Gasps ricocheted off the beige walls. A Karen in the front row clutched her pearls for real this time. But Ethan Caldwell, the community's part-time maintenance guy everyone called that quiet Mexican dude who trims hedges too slow, didn't raise his voice. He didn't even stand up fast. He simply rose from the back row with the calm of a man who'd once stared down leaking barrels that could dissolve a city block. One step, two, and he was between the bottle and his wife. The liquid sloshed but never left the nozzle. And just like that, the power in the room flipped without anyone noticing yet. Before I show you the exact second Cynthia's rain turned to toxic sludge, let's rewind a little. Willow Creek Estates was supposed to be the American dream. White picket fences, perfectly mowed lawns measured to the inch, and an HOA that protected property values. Translation: Cynthia Beaumont ruled like a medieval queen, who fined you $250 for a flagpole 2 inches too tall or a flower bed that dared bloom outside the approved color palette. Ethan and Lena had moved in 3 years ago after he left his old life behind. Hazmat response on oil rigs, the kind where one wrong breath meant a closed casket. He never talked about it. Why would he? He just wanted peace, a yard for their future kid. And maybe a little garden where Lena could grow tomatoes without written permission. Big mistake. Cynthia had hated them from day one. "Those people," she'd whisper at board meetings, meaning anyone who asked why the rules changed every time she felt like it. Last month she'd cited Lena for excessive outdoor activity, because a few neighbors dropped by for a baby shower. Ethan got fined twice for improper tool storage, after he fixed a widow's broken sprinkler at 7:01 p.m., 1 minute past the sacred quiet hours. The community whispered, laughed behind their backs, but nobody stood up. Why risk a $500 fine and public shaming on the monthly newsletter? Tonight's emergency meeting was supposed to be about addressing resident complaints. Translation: publicly humiliating anyone who dared question Cynthia's latest masterpiece. The new rule banning anything non-traditional on front lawns, including Lena's tiny victory garden that actually fed 3 elderly neighbors. Cynthia had marched in carrying her little cleaning supply bag like a designer purse. Nobody questioned it. She was the president. She was above suspicion. Until she wasn't. Ethan's eyes locked on the bottle. The viscosity, the faint yellow tint under the label edge, the way the fumes bit at the back of his throat, sodium hydroxide concentrated, the real industrial stuff that eats through skin in seconds. Not the watered-down janitorial junk in the supply closet he was allowed to use. This was the sealed cabinet version. The one marked authorized personnel only with 3 hazard diamonds. The cabinet he'd personally padlocked 2 weeks ago after finding it unlocked and leaking. Cynthia had clearly picked the lock. "You think you can just waltz in here with your little violations and your little baby bump and make me look bad?" Cynthia hissed, waving the bottle like a scepter. A droplet flew free and hit the oak table. It hissed. Just a tiny sizzle, but Ethan heard it like a gunshot. Lena's breath hitched. Ethan placed one hand gently on her shoulder, the other hovering inches from Cynthia's wrist. "Ma'am," he said quietly, voice steady as bedrock, "put the bottle on the table." Slowly. Cynthia laughed, that high, brittle laugh of someone who'd never been told no. "Oh, the janitor's giving orders now? How adorable. This is just cleaning solution, darling. The kind you people can't seem to use correctly." She took a step closer to Lena. "Maybe a little splash will remind everyone who runs this community." The room went dead silent. Someone's phone clattered to the floor. Old Mr. Hargrove in the third row muttered, "Jesus Christ, she's lost it." Ethan didn't blink. "That's not cleaning solution. That's 12% sodium hydroxide. One drop on skin causes chemical burns in under 3 seconds. On a pregnant woman, you're looking at permanent scarring and possible preterm labor." "Put down." Cynthia's smile froze. For the first time all night, a flicker of uncertainty crossed her Botox face. "You're bluffing. You're just the lawn boy." Ethan's voice stayed soft, almost conversational. "I locked that cabinet myself after your last inspection. The seal was broken. You knew that." He tilted his head slightly toward the table. "And right now that droplet is eating through the varnish. Look." Every head turned. Sure enough, a small white patch was spreading where the liquid sat, faint smoke curling up like a question mark. A woman in the back row gagged. Cynthia's hand trembled, just once, but she covered it by slamming the bottle down harder than necessary. "This is ridiculous. You're trying to turn a simple enforcement action into a circus." "I've run this board for years without incident." Ethan knelt slowly, still between his wife and the table, eyes never leaving the bottle. "Years without incident," he repeated, the words dripping with the kind of sarcasm that made half the room choke on nervous laughter. "Like the time you fined Mrs. Alvarez $300 for her American flag being too large on Memorial Day? Or when you threatened to tow Mr. Patel's Honda because the license plate frame was non-compliant?" Real community leadership right there. A few residents actually snorted. Cynthia's face flushed the color of her rejected rose bushes. The HOA attorney, slick-haired Miles Whitaker, stepped forward with his usual oily charm. "Let's all calm down. Mr. Caldwell already tried to lock that cabinet without board approval. Now he's manufacturing drama to cover his insubordination." Ethan rose. "The cabinet had a hazard label for a reason. You signed the safety waiver yourself, Cynthia. Or did you forget?" Miles smirked. "There are no hazard labels in our inventory." Ethan's smile was small, tired, and absolutely lethal. "Then why does this bottle have 3 of them?" The room erupted. Cynthia tried to regain control, voice shrill. "Everyone sit down. This meeting is not over." But people were already scooting chairs back, eyes darting between the sizzling table and the woman who just threatened a pregnant mother with what was starting to look like a weapon. Ethan turned to his wife, voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. "You okay?" Lena nodded, eyes shining with something between fear and pride. "I am now." But Cynthia wasn't done. She never was. She snatched the bottle back up like a toddler reclaiming a toy. "This is standard supply. You maintenance people are always overreacting." The nozzle tilted again, this time toward the entire front row. Residents scrambled backward so fast chairs toppled. Ethan's voice cut through the chaos like a scalpel. "Leave it on the table. Don't carry it around the room. Vapors alone can damage lungs at this concentration." Cynthia rolled her eyes so hard it was a miracle they didn't stick. "Oh please. Next you'll tell us you're some kind of chemical expert. You fix sprinklers for a living." A low chuckle rippled through the crowd. Ethan didn't laugh. He simply pointed at the table edge where the droplet had now eaten a visible groove. "That's not varnish reacting. That's metal under the finish starting to pit. In 30 seconds it'll start smoking heavier. In 2 minutes someone's going to need medical attention. You want that on your precious newsletter." Old Mr. Hargrove stood up, 78 years old, former Navy, 0 patients left. "Lady, I've seen men die from less stupidity than this. Listen to the man." Cynthia's laugh was pure venom. "Oh wonderful, now the janitor and the old sailor are teaming up against me. This community is going to hell." Ethan took one measured step closer, still shielding Lena. "Where exactly did you get that bottle, Cynthia? Because the diluted version in the supply closet doesn't smell like battery acid and doesn't come with a skull and crossbones sticker under the label." She bristled. "It was delivered last week. A contractor recommended it. Perfectly legal." Which contractor? Ethan asked, voice mild. I don't remember the name. Miles jumped in. This is harassment. Madam President, please place the bottle here and we'll prove it's harmless. Cynthia marched to the long conference table like she was on a runway and slammed the bottle down again. Another droplet bounced. This one hit a resident's purse strap. The woman yelped as the leather instantly discolored. Ethan moved like he'd done it 1,000 times because he had. He grabbed a stack of paper napkins from the refreshment table, folded them into a barrier, and gently guided people back another 6 feet. Door only for ventilation. No windows. Slow and controlled. Mr. Hargrove was already moving, cracking the main door exactly 3 inches. Others followed without being told. The shift in the room was palpable. For years they'd obeyed Cynthia out of fear. Tonight they were obeying Ethan out of instinct. Cynthia noticed. Her voice cracked. You're all being ridiculous. He's just trying to scare you so he can avoid his violations. A young mom in the back raised her phone. I'm recording this. My kid plays in that park you maintain. If that's what you call maintenance, I want proof. More phones went up. Cynthia's face drained of color. Put those away. Board policy prohibits unauthorized recording. Ethan's reply was quiet but carried to every corner. Safety incident overrides board policy. Check the new property management contract you signed last month. The one you told everyone was just paperwork. Cynthia's eyes darted toward the hallway. She knew about the new cameras. Everyone did, except she thought she controlled them. Miles tried one last save. This is getting out of hand. Let's adjourn and handle this privately. No, Ethan said. One word. It landed like a gavel. The community deserves to see exactly what their president brought into a room full of children, elderly, and a pregnant woman. Lena squeezed his hand. The baby kicked hard enough that even the people nearby could see the movement under her shirt. A collective mixed with outrage swept the room. Cynthia's composure finally snapped. You think you're so smart? You're nothing but a glorified gardener who got lucky with a wife who knows how to play the victim card. Ethan met her eyes for the first time without looking away. I locked that cabinet because 3 written warnings about improper chemical storage went unanswered. You signed 2 of them. The third you lost. Gasps. Actual movie-level gasps. Mr. Hargrove folded his arms. She signed safety forms? Then why's she waving the stuff around like party favors? Cynthia's voice rose to a shriek. This is a coordinated attack on my leadership. I have kept property values up for years. By terrorizing everyone who plants the wrong petunias, someone muttered loud enough to carry. Ethan knelt again, examining the bottle without touching it. This concentration isn't even legal for residential use without special licensing. Whoever gave it to you broke federal regs. And you brought it into a public meeting. Miles wiped sweat from his upper lip. Pure speculation. Ethan stood. Then let's stop speculating. Property management installed hallway cameras last month. Independent ones. Not the ones you control. Let's pull the footage from 30 minutes ago. The room went so quiet you could hear the chemical still softly eating the table. Cynthia's hand flew to her throat. Those cameras require my authorization. Ethan's smile was small and terrifying. Not for safety incidents. And right now, this qualifies. He pulled out his phone, the one he almost never used, and dialed the after-hours property management line he'd saved after the last leak incident. Hi, this is Ethan Caldwell at Willow Creek. We have an active hazardous materials exposure in the community center. Requesting immediate footage review from hallway C2 and storage closet feed. Cynthia lunged for the phone. Ethan didn't even flinch. He simply turned his body, keeping her at arm's length like she was the hazardous material. The voice on speakerphone answered loud enough for everyone to hear. Copy that. Pulling footage now. Someone will be there in 8 minutes. Do not touch the substance. Cynthia's knees actually buckled. She caught herself on the table, right next to the sizzling spot. She jerked her hand back with a tiny yelp. Ethan looked at her, voice soft with something that might have been pity if it wasn't so laced with exhaustion. You could have just admitted the cabinet was a bad idea. Instead you decided to weaponize it. In front of my wife and our baby. For the first time all night, Cynthia Beaumont looked small. 8 minutes felt like 8 years. The entire room stood in a loose semicircle, phone still recording, eyes locked on the woman who'd spent years making their lives miserable over grass length. Cynthia paced in tiny circles, heels clicking like a countdown. Every few seconds she glanced at the bottle like it might bite her. Ethan stayed exactly where he was, between the threat and everyone else. Lena leaned against him, breathing steady now that the immediate danger had passed. He kept one hand on her shoulder, thumb tracing small circles the way he used to calm her during the long nights on the rig when he'd call home from halfway around the world. The property management team arrived in matching navy polos, Rachel and Marcus, both ex-cops who didn't take nonsense from anyone, especially not entitled board presidents. Rachel took one look at the table and whistled low. That's not janitorial supply. That's straight industrial. Who brought this in here? Every finger in the room pointed at Cynthia. Marcus already had his tablet out. Pulling C2 now. Timestamp 30 minutes pre-meeting. The screen lit up. The hallway appeared, empty except for the supply closet door. Then Cynthia appeared on camera, glancing both ways like a cartoon villain, hearing jingling. She unlocked the restricted cabinet, the one with the bright red, authorized personnel only sign Ethan had installed himself. She reached in, grabbed the exact bottle now sitting on the table, and even tested a tiny splash on the hallway railing. The metal immediately discolored. She recoiled, muttered something, then marched toward the boardroom still clutching it like a trophy. The audio caught her words crystal clear. Let's see how that little garden princess likes a real violation notice. The room exploded. Cynthia's face went gray. That's taken out of context. I was just checking the product. Rachel didn't even look up from the tablet. You tested concentrated sodium hydroxide in a public hallway. Then carried it into a meeting with a pregnant resident. That's not checking. That's assault with a chemical weapon. Marcus was already on his radio. We're treating this as an active incident. Authorities en route. Cynthia spun toward Ethan, eyes wild. You did this. You set me up. Ethan shook his head slowly. I locked the cabinet because it was dangerous. You picked the lock. You brought it in. You threatened my family. All I did was refuse to let you hurt them. Miles Whitaker was already backing away physically, briefcase clutched like a shield. I think my client needs separate counsel. This is beyond my scope. Cynthia lunged for the bottle one last desperate time. I'll prove it's harmless. Ethan's hand shot out, not grabbing her, just blocking. Don't. One word. She froze mid-reach. The room held its breath. Rachel stepped between them. Ma'am, you are officially suspended pending investigation. Leave the premises. Now. Cynthia's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. For the first time in 8 years, the woman who had weaponized every comma in the bylaws had nothing left to say. She stumbled toward the door. Residents parted like the Red Sea, but not out of respect, out of disgust. Someone actually started slow clapping. Then another. Soon the entire room was clapping as Cynthia Beaumont, former queen of Willow Creek, shuffled out with her head down and her reputation in flames. Rachel turned to Ethan. You recognize the chemical on site. That wasn't janitor training. Ethan shrugged, the smallest smile tugging at his mouth. Old job. Different life. I left it behind so my kid wouldn't grow up without a dad. He looked at Lena, then at the room. Guess it came in handy one last time. Mr. Hargrove slapped him on the back. Son, you just saved this community from its worst tyrant. The board's having an emergency vote tomorrow. Safety compliance officer position is yours if you want it. Real authority. Real paycheck. No more hedge trimming for minimum wage. Ethan looked at Lena. She nodded once, eyes shining. He turned back to the room. I'll think about it. But the first rule is no more chemical warfare at meetings. Laughter, real relieved laughter, filled the space for the first time in years. Later that night, as they walked to their car under the streetlights, Lena leaned into him. "You didn't have to reveal anything about the rigs." "Didn't need to," Ethan said softly. "The truth did the heavy lifting." Behind them, red and blue lights flashed as two patrol cars pulled up to Cynthia's McMansion. Neighbors peeked from windows. Curtains twitched. The woman who had spent years making everyone afraid finally learned what fear felt like. Ethan buckled Lena in, kissed her forehead, then rested his hand on her belly. The baby kicked hello. He smiled into the quiet night. So tell me in the comments, was Cynthia Beaumont just a dedicated HOA president enforcing the rules? Or was Ethan Caldwell wrong to hide his past and finally fight back when his family was threatened? Who was really in the wrong here? Drop your verdict below. And if you want more HOA Karen stories where the little guy finally wins, smash that subscribe button. Next time we're tackling the pool Nazi who banned kids for laughing too loud. You're not going to believe what happened when the quiet dad showed up with receipts. See you in the next one.